The neon lights of the bar sign flickered like dying fireflies, casting an eerie blue glow across the rain-slicked pavement. I pulled my thin jacket tighter around my shoulders, the fabric worn at the elbows, as I ducked inside the velvet room. The warmth hit me first, a wall of heat, perfume, and whiskey that temporarily chased away the October chill that had settled into my bones during my double shift at the diner. Just one drink, I whispered to myself. One drink to forget about the eviction notice. My apartment, if you could call that glorified closet an apartment, was slipping through my fingers like sand, and I had exactly 3 days to come up with rent money I didn't have. I slid onto a bar stool, wincing at the protest of my swollen feet. 12 hours of carrying plates and dodging wandering hands had left me hollow and aching. The bartender, a woman with a tight ponytail and tired eyes that matched my own, gave me a nod of recognition. "Rough night, Ellie?" she asked, already reaching for a bottle of the house red. "Rough month," I corrected with a half-smile that felt more like a grimace. "The usual, please." The wine wasn't good, but it was cheap, and cheap was all I could afford. As she poured, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirrored wall behind the bar. My dark hair had escaped from its once neat bun, strands framing my pale face like a mourning veil. Purple shadows pooled beneath my eyes, deepened by the bar's dim lighting. I looked as fragile as I felt. A ghost of the confident girl who'd moved to the city with dreams of finishing her art degree. That girl seemed like a stranger now, buried beneath the weight of student loans, a dead-end job, and the still raw grief of losing Dad 6 months ago. The medical bills had swallowed every penny of savings, leaving me with nothing but his old watch and a mountain of debt. I took a sip of wine, letting the tart liquid coat my tongue. The velvet room was busier than usual for a Wednesday night. In the corner, a jazz quartet played something low and melancholy, the saxophone wailing like it knew exactly how I felt. I closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me, a momentary escape from reality. "Hey there, beautiful." The voice, slurred and too close, yanked me back to the present. A man had materialized beside me, invading my space with the stench of too many beers. "Why so serious? Let me buy you a real drink." I kept my eyes on my glass. "No, thank you. I'm fine with this." He slid closer, his thigh pressing against mine. "Come on, don't be like that. Pretty girl like you shouldn't drink alone." My stomach knotted with a familiar dread. I'd dealt with enough drunks at the diner to know that neither politeness nor firmness would deter him. I edged away, but he followed, his meaty hand landing heavily on my shoulder. "I said I'm fine," I repeated, louder this time, shrugging off his touch. His fingers dug in harder. "Playing hard to get, huh? I like that." The bartender shot me a concerned look. But before she could intervene, the drunk man's grip tightened painfully on my arm, pulling me halfway off the stool. My wine glass toppled, spreading like a bloodstain across the polished wood. "Let me go," I snapped, fear and anger colliding in my chest as I tried to twist free. "You heard the lady." The voice came from somewhere behind us, quiet, but with an edge that cut through the noise of the bar like a blade through silk. "She's not interested." The drunk man spun around, dragging me with him. "Mind your own business, pal. This is between me and—" His words died in his throat. The crowd had parted like the Red Sea, creating a clear path for the man who stood watching us. Even in my panicked state, I felt the air shift, a sudden drop in pressure, as if a storm had rolled in without warning. He wasn't particularly tall, but he commanded the space with an authority that seemed to expand beyond his physical form. His suit was impeccably tailored, the charcoal fabric emphasizing broad shoulders that tapered to a lean waist. Italian, if I had to guess, and worth more than I'd make in 6 months. His dark hair was swept back from a face that belonged on ancient Roman coins, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry. But it was his eyes that rooted me to the spot. Glacial blue, assessing the situation with calculated precision. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him like shadows, their expressions blank, hands hovering near the bulges beneath their jackets that were unmistakably guns. My breath caught in my throat as recognition dawned slowly. I'd seen his face before, on the local news, always carefully framed as alleged or suspected, when they discussed the Castellano crime family that controlled the city's east side. Dante Castellano, the name whispered in the diner when waitresses traded stories about which restaurants were fronts, which businesses paid protection money. I was just having some fun, the drunk man stammered, his grip on my arm loosening. No harm done. Dante's gaze shifted to me for a split second, taking in my disheveled appearance, the spilled wine, my trembling hand. Something flashed in those cold eyes. Not quite concern, but a focused intensity that made my skin prickle. His voice, when it came again, was deceptively soft. Don't touch her. 3 words. That's all it took. No shouting, no threats. Just 3 words delivered with such quiet certainty that they landed like physical blows. The drunk man released me immediately, backing away with his hands raised. Sure thing, man. Misunderstanding. I'm gone. He stumbled through the crowd, nearly tripping over himself in his haste to escape. The tension in the room eased, conversations resuming as Dante gave a slight nod to his men. One disappeared after the drunk, while the other took up position near the door. I rubbed my arm where fingerprints were already blooming into bruises, suddenly aware of how exposed I felt. Thank you, I managed, though my voice sounded small even to my own ears. Dante studied me with an unreadable expression. Up close, I could see the faint scar that bisected his left eyebrow, the only imperfection in his otherwise flawless face. He smelled of sandalwood and something darker, something expensive and distinctly masculine. Are you hurt? He asked. And there was something in his tone, a slight accent, perhaps Italian, that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. No, I'm fine. The lie came automatically. I was never fine, but admitting weakness was a luxury I couldn't afford. His eyes narrowed slightly, seeing through the pretense. With a subtle gesture, he summoned the bartender, who appeared instantly with a fresh glass of wine and a towel for the spill. Put it on my tab, Maria, he said, his focus never leaving my face, and anything else she wants. Yes, Mr. Castellano, the bartender, Maria, moved with the efficiency of someone accustomed to following his orders without question. I should have thanked him again and walked away. Should have finished my drink and gone home to my cramped apartment to count pennies and worry about rent. Instead, I found myself asking, do you always rescue random women in bars? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, transforming his severe features into something dangerously appealing, only when they look like they might be worth rescuing. Heat crept up my neck. I wasn't sure if I should be flattered or offended. And what makes me look worth rescuing, Mr. Castellano? Dante, he corrected, settling onto the stool beside me with casual grace, though I noticed he positioned himself to keep the entire room in his sightline. And it's in the eyes. You're drowning, but you haven't given up fighting yet. His assessment, so casually delivered yet so unnervingly accurate, left me momentarily speechless. I took a sip of wine to hide my discomfort, only to find it wasn't the house red, but something rich and velvety that probably cost more than my daily wages. I'm Ellie, I offered, not sure why I felt compelled to give him my name. Ellie Morgan. Ellie, he repeated, as if testing the weight of it on his tongue. Short for Eleanor? I nodded, surprised he'd asked. Most people didn't bother with such details. The jazz quartet had shifted to something slower, more intimate. Dante signaled to a waiter who appeared with a tumbler of amber liquid. Whiskey, neat. What brings you to the Velvet Room on a Wednesday night, Eleanor Morgan? He asked, his eyes still scanning the crowd periodically, a predator ensuring his territory remained secure. I hesitated, debating how much truth to offer. Bad day. Bad month, actually. Financial troubles? It wasn't really a question. He'd already seen through me, the worn jacket, the cheap wine, the exhaustion etched into every line of my face. Something like that, I admitted, turning the stem of my glass between my fingers. Nothing I can't handle. He took a sip of his whiskey, watching me over the rim. Pride. I respect that. But pride doesn't pay bills, neither does accepting charity from strangers. I countered, immediately regretting my sharpness. Antagonizing someone like Dante Castellano was probably unwise, regardless of his unexpected intervention on my behalf. To my surprise, he laughed. A genuine sound that transformed his face completely. Fair point. Then let's not be strangers. He raised his glass in a mock toast. To new acquaintances. I shouldn't have clinked my glass against his. Shouldn't have allowed the conversation to continue as he asked subtle questions about my life, piecing together my story with the precision of someone accustomed to extracting information. I told him about the diner, about my abandoned art studies, even about Dad's illness, though I carefully omitted the financial devastation it had caused. What I didn't understand was why someone like him would be interested. Men like Dante Castellano didn't waste time on struggling waitresses with empty bank accounts. "You're an artist?" he asked, genuine interest flickering across his features when I mentioned my former studies. "Was," I corrected, a familiar pang of loss squeezing my chest. "Had to drop out in my final year." "What medium?" "Mixed. Mostly oils and charcoal, but I was experimenting with installations before." I trailed off, not wanting to rehash the series of misfortunes that had derailed my life. Dante nodded thoughtfully, as if filing away this information for future reference. "I collect art," he said simply. "Perhaps I'll show you my gallery sometime." The casual invitation hung in the air between us, a dangerous possibility that I knew I should decline. Yet something about him held me captive, a mixture of curiosity and an awareness that had nothing to do with his reputation, and everything to do with the way his presence seemed to electrify the very air around him. I was saved from responding by the return of his guard, who leaned in to whisper something in Dante's ear. His expression hardened momentarily, before he nodded and stood. "Business calls," he said, finishing his whiskey in one smooth motion. "A pleasure meeting you, Eleanor Morgan." Relief and disappointment battled within me as he prepared to leave. This strange interlude would end, and I'd return to my regular life of endless worry. But then he reached into his jacket and withdrew a sleek business card, placing it on the bar beside my glass. "My private number," he said, his voice lower now, meant only for me. "If you find yourself in trouble again." His fingers brushed mine as he pushed the card closer, the brief contact sending an inexplicable current up my arm. "I can handle myself," I said, though we both knew it wasn't entirely true. That ghost of a smile returned. "I don't doubt it, but everyone needs help occasionally." He gestured to Maria. "She'll make sure you get home safely." Before I could protest that I didn't need an escort, he added, "The man from earlier left, but he has friends. Indulge me in this small precaution." With that, he turned and walked away, his guards falling into step beside him. The crowd parted again, conversations dimming as he passed. At the door, he paused and glanced back at me, our eyes locking across the room for one electric moment before he disappeared into the night. I stared at the business card, heavy stock, minimalist design, just his name and a phone number embossed in silver. The rational part of my brain screamed to leave it behind, to forget this encounter and the dangerous man with ice-blue eyes. Instead, I slipped it into my pocket, a weight against my hip that felt simultaneously like a lifeline and a trap. What I didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that this chance encounter would spiral into something I could never have anticipated, that within 24 hours my life would implode in ways I couldn't imagine, that the business card burning a hole in my pocket would become both my salvation and my undoing. Maria returned with my jacket. "Ready to go, honey? Mr. Castellano arranged for a car." I nodded, suddenly bone-tired and overwhelmed. As I followed her toward the exit, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on my back. Something told me that walking out of the velvet room wouldn't be the end of my interaction with Dante Castellano. I was right. It was only the beginning. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned in my tiny studio apartment, replaying the encounter at the bar. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dante Castellano's face. Those piercing blue eyes that seemed to look straight through me, the controlled power in his stance. The way the entire room had bent to his will with just 3 words. Dawn was breaking when I finally gave up on sleep. The morning light filtered through my threadbare curtains, illuminating the stack of bills on my kitchen counter. The eviction notice sat on top, its threat now 3 days from becoming reality. I made a cup of instant coffee and pulled out my waitressing uniform, wincing at the coffee stain I hadn't been able to remove. As I dressed, my fingers brushed against Dante's business card, still in the pocket of my jacket. I pulled it out, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. In the harsh morning light, last night's encounter felt surreal, like something from a movie, not my mundane life of double shifts and mounting debt. I tucked the card into my wallet, telling myself I was keeping it only as a souvenir of a strange night. I would never call him. Men like Dante Castellano didn't help people like me without expecting something in return, and I had nothing left to give. The diner was busier than usual for a Thursday morning. I moved on autopilot between tables, pouring coffee and delivering plates of greasy breakfast food. My manager, Tony, watched me with narrowed eyes as I fumbled an order, my sleep-deprived brain struggling to keep up. "You look like hell," he said bluntly when I passed him at the register. "Thanks for noticing," I muttered, punching in an order. "Got rent sorted yet?" Tony knew my situation. He'd overheard me begging my landlord for an extension last week when the man had cornered me outside the diner. I shook my head, throat tight. "Working on it," Tony sighed, scratching his stubbled chin. "Look, I'd help if I could, but business is slow and—" "It's fine." I cut him off, not wanting his pity. "I'll figure something out." The bell above the door jingled, and I turned, grateful for the distraction. My heart dropped into my stomach. Mike Reeves, my ex-boyfriend, and the reason for half my financial troubles, swaggered in, flanked by two of his usual cronies. He spotted me immediately, his lips curving into a smile that once made my knees weak but now made my skin crawl. Well, he drawled, sliding into a booth in my section. "If it isn't my favorite waitress." I approached his table with dread coiling in my gut. "What can I get you?" I asked, keeping my voice professionally detached. Mike leaned back, his eyes traveling lazily down my body. "You're looking rough, Elle. Life's been hard without me, huh?" His friend snickered. I tightened my grip on my order pad, refusing to take the bait. Mike and I had dated for 8 months. 8 months during which he'd borrowed my credit card, racked up debt in my name, and disappeared when Dad got sick. I'd been too overwhelmed with hospital visits to press charges, and by the time I'd discovered the extent of the damage, it was too late. "Just coffee," Mike said when I didn't respond to his taunt. "And maybe a little information." He lowered his voice, leaning forward. "Word is you were getting cozy with Dante Castellano last night at the Velvet Room." My blood turned to ice. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't play dumb, Elle. Small city, people talk." His eyes hardened. "Castellano's dangerous, not the kind of man you want to get mixed up with." "Like you care," I hissed, anger momentarily overriding caution. "Maybe I do." He grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to make me wince. "Maybe I'm not done with you yet." I yanked my arm free, heart pounding. "I'll get your coffee." In the kitchen, I leaned against the wall, trying to steady my breathing. Mike's presence was the last thing I needed today. He was connected enough to know about Dante, which meant he was still involved with the wrong crowd. The crowd that had gotten him, and by extension me, into trouble in the first place. I returned with 3 cups of coffee, setting them down without meeting Mike's eyes. "So what did Castellano want with you?" Mike persisted, his tone casual, but his eyes sharp. "Nothing. He was just being polite," I lied, aware that every word was dangerous. If Mike was asking, he had a reason, and it couldn't be good. "Castellano isn't polite to nobodies without a reason, Elle," Mike snorted. "Did he offer you a job? Is that it?" I froze. "What kind of job?" Mike exchanged glances with his friends. "The kind that pays well but costs everything." He took a sip of coffee. "You should stay away from him. He's got a reputation." "So I've heard," I murmured, thinking of the guards with their concealed weapons, the way the entire bar had deferred to Dante's presence. "Listen." Mike's voice softened in a way I recognized, the tone he used when he wanted something. "I might be able to help with your situation. I know about the eviction." My head snapped up. "How?" "Like I said, small city," he shrugged. "I've got some cash. Could cover your rent, get you back on your feet." The offer dangled before me like a mirage in a desert. "What's the catch?" No catch. Just a small favor. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I need someone to deliver a package for me. Tonight, and there it was. I'd suspected Mike's newfound income came from something illegal, but I'd never confirmed it. Now he was trying to drag me into whatever scheme he was running. Not interested, I said firmly, turning to leave. 3 days, right? Mike called after me. That's all you've got before they change the locks. Think about it, Elle. 1 delivery, 1 night, and your problems go away. I ignored him, retreating to the safety of the kitchen again. My hands trembled as I prepared more coffee. Mike's offer replayed in my mind, a simple solution to my immediate crisis, but I knew better than to trust him again. Whatever was in that package, it wasn't worth the risk. When I emerged, Mike and his friends were gone, leaving exact change for the coffee and nothing more. Relief washed over me until I noticed the small piece of paper tucked under one of the cups, a phone number and an address, along with a time, 10 p.m. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. The rest of my shift passed in a blur of coffee refills and fake smiles. By the time I clocked out at 3, my feet were throbbing, and a headache pounded behind my eyes. I counted my tips. Not enough, not nearly enough for rent. Outside, the October wind had picked up, carrying the scent of impending rain. I pulled my jacket tighter and headed for the bus stop, mentally calculating how much I could pawn Dad's watch for. The thought made me sick, but I was running out of options. I was so lost in my grim calculations that I didn't notice the black Audi idling across the street until I was halfway to the bus stop. My steps faltered as the back window lowered, revealing a familiar face. Eleanor. Dante's voice carried easily across the street, calm and commanding. I glanced around, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. The diner was on a quiet side street with few pedestrians at this hour. No one would notice if I disappeared. Get in, Dante said, pushing the door open. Please. That please seemed incongruous coming from him, a man who clearly wasn't accustomed to asking for things. I hesitated, torn between sensible fear and desperate curiosity. I just want to talk, he added, his expression giving away nothing. I thought of my empty apartment, the eviction notice, Mike's ominous offer. What did I have to lose, really? I crossed the street slowly, hyper-aware of the way Dante watched my approach. His driver, a broad-shouldered man with a face like granite, stared straight ahead, while another guard stood nearby, scanning the area with vigilant eyes. This is becoming a habit, I said, as I slid into the back seat, trying to mask my nervousness with bravado. Rescuing me from my very ordinary life. The corner of Dante's mouth lifted slightly. Is that what I'm doing? Up close, in the filtered daylight. He was even more striking than he had been in the dimly lit bar. His suit today was navy, the fabric so fine it seemed to absorb light. A platinum watch gleamed at his wrist, understated but undoubtedly worth more than everything I owned. The door closed with a soft click, and the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. I became acutely aware of the intimacy of our surroundings. The supple leather seats, the privacy partition separating us from the driver, the subtle scent of Dante's cologne. Where are we going? I asked, watching familiar streets slip past the tinted windows. My office, Dante replied, studying me with that same intense focus from the night before. I have a proposition for you. My pulse jumped. What kind of proposition? A legitimate one, he said as if reading my thoughts. You need money. I need someone with your particular skills. I raised an eyebrow, skepticism overriding nervousness. My skills as a waitress? Your skills as an artist. The statement caught me off guard. I'd mentioned my former studies briefly last night, but I hadn't expected him to remember, much less consider them valuable. I haven't painted in over a year, I admitted, and I never finished my degree. Dante waved a dismissive hand. Degrees are pieces of paper. Talent is what matters. His eyes locked with mine. And you have talent, don't you, Eleanor? The question hung between us, weighted with an unspoken challenge. I thought of my abandoned canvases, stored in my apartment's tiny closet, gathering dust while I served pancakes and coffee to make ends meet. I used to, I said softly. The car turned onto a tree-lined avenue in the city's financial district, eventually pulling up to a sleek high-rise of glass and steel. Dante's driver opened my door while his guard surveyed the street. I stepped out, neck craning to see the top of the building. "You own this?" I asked, unable to keep the awe from my voice. "Among other things," Dante replied, placing a light hand on the small of my back to guide me inside. The touch, brief and barely there, sent an electric current up my spine. I was hyper-aware of the contrast between us. His immaculate suit against my coffee-stained uniform, his easy confidence against my wary uncertainty. The lobby was all marble and minimalist design, dominated by a massive sculpture of twisted metal that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. The security guards nodded respectfully as we passed, their eyes lingering on me with curious assessment. We rode a private elevator to the top floor in silence. I used the time to collect myself, to remind my racing heart that I was here for a business proposition, nothing more. Whatever pull I felt toward Dante was simply a product of his charisma and power, qualities that made him both successful and dangerous. The elevator opened directly into a vast office space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. One wall was lined with bookshelves, another with paintings, a collection that ranged from Renaissance-style portraits to bold contemporary pieces. "Impressive," I murmured, drawn to a particularly striking abstract canvas that somehow captured the essence of a storm at sea without using a single recognizable form. "You have a good eye," Dante commented, watching me examine the painting. "That's a Russo original, one of only 3 in private collections." I moved away from the art, reminding myself why I was here. "You mentioned a proposition." Dante gestured to a seating area, sleek leather couches arranged around a glass coffee table. As I sat, a door opened, and a man in a crisp white shirt appeared with a tray holding a carafe of coffee and delicate porcelain cups. "Antonio, this is Ms. Morgan," Dante said, as the man set down the tray. "She'll be working with us on the gallery project." Antonio nodded respectfully in my direction before disappearing as silently as he'd arrived. I raised an eyebrow at Dante. "I haven't agreed to anything yet," I pointed out. "But you will." He poured coffee into both cups, the rich aroma filling the air between us. "You need money. I need an artist with your aesthetic sensibilities to curate a new exhibition." I accepted the cup he offered, our fingers brushing briefly. "Why me? You must know dozens of established artists and curators." "I do," he acknowledged, settling back on the couch across from me. "But they lack your unique perspective." "My perspective as a struggling waitress?" I couldn't keep the bitter edge from my voice. Dante's expression remained impassive. "Your perspective as someone who understands both beauty and hardship." His gaze was penetrating, as if he could see every struggle I'd ever faced. "The exhibition is about contrasts. Light and shadow, wealth and poverty, power and vulnerability. Your life has straddled those worlds." The observation was uncomfortably accurate. Before Dad's illness, before the financial collapse, I'd moved in artistic circles, had even shown my work in small galleries. Now I lived hand to mouth, a ghost of my former self. "What exactly would this job involve?" I asked, curiosity winning over caution. "Initial curation of pieces for the exhibition, some original artwork of your own, and oversight of the installation," Dante explained. "The exhibition opens in 6 weeks at the Meridian Gallery." I nearly choked on my coffee. The Meridian was one of the most prestigious contemporary art spaces in the city, the kind of venue that launched careers. "That's ambitious," I managed. "I don't do things by half measures, Eleanor." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "The compensation would be substantial, enough to solve your immediate housing concerns and provide stability while you work." My heart raced at the prospect. It was everything I'd once dreamed of. A chance to return to the art world, to create again instead of just surviving. "And what do you get out of this?" I asked, because nothing this good came without strings. Dante set down his coffee cup, his movements deliberate and precise. "Legitimacy. The art world opens doors that would otherwise remain closed to me, regardless of my financial resources." He leaned forward slightly. "Your talent, combined with my connections, creates a mutually beneficial arrangement." The unspoken subtext was clear. A man with his reputation needed legitimate business ventures to sanitize his more questionable activities. I would be part of that facade. I don't know anything about your other businesses, I said carefully, and I don't want to. Smart girl. Dante's approval was evident in his tone. The gallery project is entirely legitimate. Your involvement would be strictly professional and above board. I wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to accept this lifeline he was offering, but Mike's warning echoed in my mind, along with everything I'd ever heard about the Castellano family. I need to think about it, I said, setting down my cup with a hand that wasn't quite steady. Dante nodded, unsurprised. Of course. He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the table between us. A good faith advance. Regardless of your decision, I stared at the envelope, understanding instinctively that it contained enough money to cover my rent with some despair. Pride warred with necessity in my chest. I can't accept that without agreeing to the job, I said, though the words cost me dearly. Something flashed in Dante's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or respect. The advance is unconditional, Eleanor. Consider it compensation for your time today. Before I could respond, his phone vibrated. He checked the screen, his expression hardening momentarily before he returned to that inscrutable calm. I have another meeting, he said, rising smoothly. Take the weekend to consider my offer. Antonio will show you out and arrange transportation. I stood as well, suddenly aware of how rumpled my uniform looked compared to his pristine suit. Thank you for the opportunity, I said formally, unsure how else to respond to this surreal situation. Dante stepped closer, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. One more thing, he said, his voice dropping to a register that seemed to bypass my ears and go straight to my core. Stay away from Mike Reeves, my breath caught. How did you— I make it my business to know who enters my territory, Dante said simply. Reeves is involved in matters that will soon become problematic for him. Whatever he offered you today, decline it. A chill ran through me at the certainty in his voice, the absolute knowledge that seemed to confirm my worst suspicions about Mike's activities. He offered me money to deliver a package, I admitted, not sure why I was telling Dante this, except that his warning had shaken me. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. That would have been a grave mistake. His hand moved to my face, one finger lifting my chin so I had no choice but to meet his gaze. Promise me you'll refuse. It wasn't a request. The gentle touch belied the steel in his voice, the command that expected only obedience. I already did, I whispered, hyper-aware of his finger against my skin, the slight callus that suggested his hands weren't as soft as his lifestyle might indicate. Good. He released me, stepping back. I'll expect your answer about the gallery position by Monday. As I followed Antonio to the elevator, envelope clutched in my hand, I felt Dante's eyes on my back, assessing, calculating, seeing more than I wanted him to see. Only when the elevator doors closed did I allow myself to exhale, my heart pounding like I'd run a marathon. In the soft lighting of the descending elevator, I opened the envelope. 5 crisp $100 bills stared back at me, along with a business card for the Meridian Gallery and a handwritten note. Your talent deserves a canvas worthy of it. DC. The car that waited for me was different from the one that had brought me, smaller, less ostentatious, but still sleek and expensive. As the driver pulled away from the curb, I gazed back at the towering building, wondering if Dante was watching from his wall of windows. I just stepped into a world I didn't understand, made a connection with a man whose very name was whispered with fear and respect. Every instinct told me to walk away, to return the money and forget about Dante Castellano and his tempting offer. Instead, I clutched the envelope tighter, feeling for the first time in months that I might have a future beyond endless diner shifts and mounting bills. What I didn't realize was that accepting Dante's help, even temporarily, had already set events in motion that would change my life forever and put me directly in the path of dangers I couldn't yet imagine. Friday morning dawned with a strange sense of possibility I hadn't felt in months. The envelope with Dante's money sat on my kitchen counter, a tangible reminder that yesterday's encounter hadn't been a dream. I'd paid a visit to my landlord last night, watching the suspicion in his eyes fade as I handed over the cash for my overdue rent. For the first time in weeks, I'd slept without the weight of impending homelessness pressing down on me. I had the day off from the diner, a rare luxury I usually spent picking up odd jobs to make ends meet. Today, though, I found myself drawn to the closet where I'd stashed my art supplies. The canvases were dusty, the paints likely dried out, but I felt an itch in my fingers I hadn't experienced in too long. As I pulled out my old portfolio, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The Meridian Gallery, 2 p.m. Car will collect you at 1:30. DC. My heart skipped. I hadn't given Dante my number, which meant he'd gone to some effort to find it. The thought should have alarmed me, but instead, I felt a thrill of anticipation. He was offering me a glimpse of the life I'd abandoned. A life where art mattered, where creativity wasn't a luxury I couldn't afford. I spent the morning poring over my old sketches and half-finished canvases, reacquainting myself with the artist I used to be. By the time I showered and changed into the nicest outfit I owned, a simple black dress that had somehow survived multiple moves and financial purges, it was nearly time for my pickup. The car arrived precisely at 1:30, a sleek sedan with tinted windows. The driver was different from yesterday, but he had the same vigilant demeanor, eyes constantly scanning our surroundings as he held the door for me. "Mr. Castellano sends his apologies," he said as we pulled away from my apartment building. "He's been delayed, but will join you at the gallery shortly." I nodded, a mixture of relief and disappointment flooding through me. Relief because Dante's presence was overwhelming in ways I wasn't ready to examine, disappointment because part of me had been looking forward to seeing him again. The Meridian Gallery was housed in a renovated industrial building on the edge of the arts district. Its concrete facade and massive steel doors belied the treasures within, some of the most innovative contemporary art in the city. I'd visited once during my student days, wandering the exhibits with reverence, never imagining I might one day be involved with such a prestigious venue. A woman in a tailored pantsuit was waiting for me in the lobby. "Ms. Morgan? I'm Sophia Reed, the gallery director." Her handshake was firm, her smile professional, but warm. "Mr. Castellano explained your role in the upcoming exhibition. I'm looking forward to working with you." I followed her through the gallery's main space, trying to mask my awe at the soaring ceilings, the perfect lighting, the carefully curated installations that transformed the industrial space into a cathedral of modern art. "The exhibition will occupy our main hall and 2 adjacent galleries," Sophia explained, leading me toward a door marked private. "Mr. Castellano has acquired several major pieces already, but he was quite insistent that you would have final say on the curation." The private viewing room contained a dozen paintings and sculptures, each illuminated with precision. I recognized works from artists whose names regularly appeared in the art world press, pieces that would typically be found in major museums or the collections of the ultra-wealthy. "These are all for the exhibition?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady as I examined a particularly striking sculpture. "Yes, though Mr. Castellano mentioned you might want to source additional pieces." Sophia handed me a tablet. "This is the preliminary catalog. Feel free to explore while we wait for him." I lost myself in the artwork, making notes about placement and thematic connections, sketching possible layouts for the exhibition. This was the world I belonged in, not the greasy diner with its endless demands and meager rewards. Here, surrounded by beauty and creativity, I felt like myself again. I was so absorbed that I didn't notice Dante's arrival until his voice cut through my concentration. "What do you think?" I turned to find him watching me from the doorway, his expression unreadable. Today he wore a charcoal suit with a deep burgundy tie, the colors accentuating the paleness of his eyes. 2 guards hovered in the corridor behind him, a constant reminder of who he was beneath the veneer of art patron. "It's incredible," I admitted, gesturing to the collection. But, he raised an eyebrow, stepping into the room. "It's missing a through line, a narrative that connects the pieces beyond their individual beauty." I surprised myself with my boldness, but if he wanted my professional opinion, he would get it. Dante's lips curved into a smile that transformed his severe features. "That's exactly why I need you, Eleanor. These are just pieces of a puzzle. You're going to assemble them into something meaningful." Sophia excused herself discreetly, leaving us alone among the artwork. Dante moved to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, smell that distinctive cologne that seemed part of his very being. "Have you made a decision about my offer?" he asked, his gaze fixed on a large abstract canvas before us. I hesitated. The sensible answer was to decline, to return the money and extricate myself from whatever game Dante was playing. But standing here, surrounded by art, I felt a pull stronger than fear or caution. "Yes," I said finally. "I'll do it." Dante turned to me, satisfaction evident in his eyes. "Excellent. Sophia will handle the paperwork. Your contract includes a substantial advance, health insurance, and a bonus upon completion." My head spun at the terms, far more generous than I'd anticipated. "That's very generous. I value talent appropriately," he said simply. "There's also an apartment available for your use during the project, above the gallery. It would be more convenient than commuting from your current residence." The offer dangled before me, tempting in its practicality. My apartment was on the opposite side of the city, requiring a long bus ride to reach the gallery. But moving into a space Dante owned, becoming even more indebted to him. "I'll keep my apartment," I said firmly. "But thank you for the offer." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, that I'd declined. I got the impression Dante Castellano wasn't used to hearing no. "As you wish." He guided me toward a different room, his hand hovering near the small of my back without quite touching me. "There's something else I wanted to show you." The second room was smaller, more intimate. Instead of internationally renowned works, it contained a series of paintings by local artists, raw, emotional pieces that captured the city's soul in ways the more polished works couldn't. "These are from my personal collection," Dante explained. "Artists from the neighborhood where I grew up. No formal training, just pure talent and the need to create." I studied the paintings with growing admiration. They lacked technical refinement, but made up for it with visceral emotional impact, scenes of urban decay, alongside moments of unexpected beauty, despair coexisting with defiance. "They're perfect," I breathed. "This is what the exhibition needs, the counterpoint to those established works, the shadow to their light." Dante watched me intently. "I was hoping you'd see it that way." Our eyes met, and something unspoken passed between us. A shared understanding of the power of contrasts, of beauty emerging from darkness. For a moment I forgot who he was, what he represented. I saw only a man who understood art the way I did, who recognized the value in overlooked talent. The spell broke when his phone vibrated. He checked it with a frown, muttering something in Italian that sounded like a curse. "Business," he said, his voice cooling. "I'm afraid I need to cut this short. Sophia will finalize the details with you." Before he could leave, I blurted out, "Thank you for this opportunity, for seeing something in me when I couldn't see it myself anymore." Dante paused, studying me with that penetrating gaze that seemed to strip away all pretenses. "Don't thank me yet, Eleanor. This world has teeth, and you'll need to sharpen your own to survive in it." The warning hung in the air between us, a reminder that beneath the cultured exterior, Dante Castellano was still a man whose business extended far beyond legitimate art galleries. As if reading my thoughts, he added, "Be careful who you trust. Not everyone in the art world has your best interests at heart." With that cryptic advice, he was gone, leaving me with Sophia and a contract that would change my life. I spent the next hour reviewing terms, signing papers, and discussing logistics for the exhibition. By the time I left the Meridian, I was officially employed as a curator and contributing artist for what promised to be the most significant exhibition of the season. The driver was waiting to take me home. As we pulled away from the gallery, I noticed a black SUV across the street, its windows tinted. Something about it raised the hairs on the back of my neck, a sense of being watched that I couldn't shake. "Is everything all right, Ms. Morgan?" the driver asked, catching my expression in the rearview mirror. "Yes," I said, trying to sound confident, "just tired." But as we turned the corner, I glanced back to see the SUV pulling into traffic behind us. My instincts screamed that something wasn't right, that I'd stepped into currents deeper and more dangerous than I'd imagined. Back in my apartment, I locked the door and leaned against it, heart racing. The afternoon's excitement had curdled into anxiety. What had I gotten myself into? Dante's world was one of power and privilege. Yes, but also one of hidden dangers and unspoken threats. As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a text. Heard you took a job with Castellano. Bad move, Elle. We need to talk. Mike. I stared at the message, dread pooling in my stomach. Mike's sudden reappearance in my life, coinciding with Dante's interest in me, couldn't be coincidence. There was a connection I was missing, something that made me more valuable to both men than I should be. Another text followed before I could respond. Dinner tomorrow. 7 p.m. Giovanni's. Don't make me come find you. The threat was thinly veiled, typical of Mike's manipulative tactics. I should ignore him, block his number, maybe even tell Dante about the continued harassment. But something held me back, a nagging suspicion that Mike knew something important, something that might explain why a man like Dante Castellano would pluck a struggling waitress from obscurity. As darkness fell outside my window, I made a decision. I would meet Mike, hear what he had to say, but on my terms. Knowledge was power, and right now, I felt powerless in a game whose rules I didn't understand. Saturday evening found me standing outside Giovanni's, a small Italian restaurant tucked between a laundromat and a bodega. It was far from the upscale establishments I now associated with Dante, but it had been one of Mike's favorite haunts during our relationship. Neutral ground where he conducted his vague business meetings. I'd spent the day alternating between excitement about my new position and anxiety about this meeting. Against my better judgment, I'd agreed to see Mike, driven by a need to understand why he was so interested in my connection to Dante. I'd dressed carefully in black jeans and a dark blue blouse, casual enough to downplay the importance of the meeting, but nice enough to armor myself with confidence. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door. The restaurant was dimly lit, the air heavy with garlic and simmering tomato sauce. Mike was already there, nursing a beer in a corner booth. He straightened when he saw me, a familiar smile spreading across his face. You came, he said as I slid into the seat across from him. You didn't leave me much choice, I replied coolly. What do you want, Mike? He signaled for the waiter, ordering another beer for himself and a glass of wine for me without asking what I wanted. A small power play I recognized from our relationship, always straight to the point, he chuckled. That's what I liked about you, Elle. No bullshit. I resisted the urge to point out that no bullshit hadn't been enough to keep him honest or faithful during our time together. I'm not here for a trip down memory lane. Mike's smile faded. Fine. Let's talk about your new employer. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Do you have any idea what you've gotten yourself into? I'm curating an art exhibition, I said, keeping my voice steady. It's a legitimate job at a respected gallery. Sure, and Castellano is just a legitimate businessman, Mike scoffed. Wake up, Ellie. The gallery is a front, a way to launder money and build connections with the city's elite. The waiter returned with our drinks, temporarily halting the conversation. I took a sip of wine to steady my nerves, unwilling to let Mike see how his words affected me. Even if that's true, I said when we were alone again. The job is real. The art is real. For now. Mike's eyes hardened. But sooner or later, he'll ask for something else, something that crosses lines you never thought you'd cross. A chill ran down my spine. You sound like you know him personally. I know enough. Mike drained half his beer in one swallow. I know he doesn't take an interest in random waitresses without a reason. What does he really want from you, Elle? The question had been haunting me since Dante first approached me at the Velvet Room. What did someone like him see in someone like me? The art exhibition made sense on the surface. I had the background, the aesthetic sense he was looking for. But was there more? My artistic expertise, I said, voicing the official explanation. He's building a reputation in the art world. Mike laughed, the sound sharp and without humor. Right. And I'm just a concerned ex-boyfriend with no ulterior motives. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing mine. Listen to me. You need to get out while you can. I withdrew my hand. Why do you care? We haven't spoken in months, and suddenly you're concerned about my career choices. Maybe I never stopped caring, he said, his voice softening in a way that once would have melted my defenses. Or maybe I know things about Castellano that would make your blood freeze. Then tell me, I challenged. If you know something specific, something I should be afraid of, tell me now. Mike glanced around the restaurant, his posture tense. Not here. But trust me when I say that Dante Castellano collects people like he collects art, for a specific purpose, and only for as long as they're useful. I thought of the paintings at the Meridian, the careful curation, the obvious value Dante placed on them. If he treated people the same way, was that such a terrible thing? You still haven't explained why you care, I pressed. What's your stake in this, Mike? A shadow crossed his face. Let's just say Castellano and I have history. History I don't want extending to you. Before I could respond, the restaurant door opened, and 2 men in dark suits entered. They scanned the room with practiced efficiency, their gazes landing on our table. My heart stuttered when I recognized one of them, the guard who had accompanied Dante at the Velvet Room. Mike tensed, his hand moving instinctively toward his waistband before stopping himself. We need to go, he muttered. Now. Are they here for you or for me? I asked, suddenly understanding that this meeting had been a mistake. Does it matter? Mike grabbed my arm, pulling me from the booth. Back door, through the kitchen. We slipped between tables as the men started in our direction. The kitchen staff shouted protests as we burst through the swinging doors, but Mike ignored them, dragging me past steaming pots and startled cooks toward a service exit. The night air hit me like a slap as we emerged into an alley behind the restaurant. Mike still had my arm in a vice grip as he pulled me toward a motorcycle parked near a dumpster. Get on, he ordered, thrusting a helmet into my hands. I'm not going anywhere with you, I protested, trying to pull away. Those men work for Dante. Maybe they just want to talk. Mike's laugh was bitter. Castellano's men don't just talk, Elle. They enforce. Now get on the damn bike before they decide to make an example of both of us. The service door banged open behind us. One of the men appeared, speaking rapidly into a phone. The other was drawing something from inside his jacket. Fear overrode my reservations. I jammed the helmet on and climbed behind Mike, wrapping my arms around his waist as the motorcycle roared to life. We shot down the alley, taking a sharp turn onto a side street, just as I heard a shout behind us. Mike weaved through traffic with reckless speed, the city blurring around us as we put distance between ourselves and Giovanni's. My thoughts raced faster than the motorcycle. Had Dante's men been following me? Had they been tracking Mike? What history could Mike possibly have with someone like Dante Castellano? After 20 minutes of zigzagging through the city, Mike finally slowed, pulling into the parking garage of an apartment building I didn't recognize. He killed the engine and helped me off the bike, my legs shaky from adrenaline and fear. Where are we? I demanded, removing the helmet. Somewhere safe, Mike said, guiding me toward an elevator. A friend's place. He's out of town. The apartment was sparsely furnished but clean, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the city's industrial district. Mike locked the door behind us, checking the peephole before turning to me. You want answers? He asked, running a hand through his wind-blown hair. Fine, but you're not going to like them. He crossed to a cabinet, pulling out a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. I accepted the drink, needing something to steady my nerves. Dante Castellano isn't just some businessman with shady connections, Mike began, downing his whiskey in one swallow. He's the heir to one of the most dangerous crime families in the city. His father built an empire on drugs and human trafficking before going legitimate. Dante's continuing the tradition. None of this was particularly surprising. Dante's reputation preceded him, after all. That doesn't explain why he's interested in me, or why you suddenly care. Mike poured himself another drink. 2 years ago, I worked for them. Small-time stuff. Moving packages, collecting debts. I was good at it. Started moving up the ranks. His expression darkened, until I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. What? I asked, caught between skepticism and morbid curiosity. Dante executing a rival himself. Not ordering it done. Doing it personally. Mike's eyes met mine, The man has ice in his veins, Elle. He pulled the trigger without blinking, then went to the opera like nothing happened. A chill ran through me as I remembered Dante's glacial eyes, the controlled power in his movements. I could almost see it, those elegant hands holding a gun with the same precision they used to select fine art. I got out, Mike continued. Disappeared for a while, changed my connections. But you don't just walk away from the Castellanos. I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. And me? Where do I fit in this story? I pressed, still not understanding the connection. Mike hesitated. A flash of something, guilt perhaps, crossing his face. That's the thing, Elle. I think he's using you to get to me. That's ridiculous, I scoffed. He doesn't even know we were together. Doesn't he? Mike challenged. The man has eyes everywhere. He knows I'm back in town, knows we have history. What better way to draw me out than through you? The idea was so absurd I almost laughed. You're saying Dante Castellano, who could have anyone, is offering me a dream job and thousands of dollars as, what? Bait. Not just bait, Mike said grimly. Insurance. If I step out of line, he has leverage. Someone I care about. I set down my glass with a sharp click. That's convenient, Mike. Make this about you when we both know you stopped caring the minute my dad got sick and my bank account emptied. A flash of genuine hurt crossed his face. I deserved that. But I'm telling you the truth now. Castellano is playing a game, and you're a pawn. I stood, suddenly needing distance from Mike and his self-serving warnings. Even if that were true, which I don't believe for a second, what am I supposed to do? Walk away from the first real opportunity I've had in years? Yes, Mike said simply. Disappear. I have connections. We can get you somewhere safe until this blows over. The offer was so reminiscent of his old patterns, creating chaos, then positioning himself as the only solution, that it snapped something inside me. No, I said firmly. I'm not running away based on your paranoid theories. I have a contract, a legitimate job that could restart my career. A contract with the devil, Mike muttered. At least let me help you. I can tell you things about Castellano's operation that would... He was interrupted by my phone buzzing. I pulled it out, my heart lurching when I saw Dante's private number on the screen. Mike's eyes widened. Don't answer that. But I was already swiping to accept the call, some instinct telling me that ignoring Dante would be a worse mistake than anything I'd done so far. Eleanor. Dante's voice was calm, controlled, but with an undercurrent that raised goosebumps on my arms. Are you safe? I glanced at Mike, who was frantically gesturing for me to hang up. Yes, I answered carefully. Good. The relief in his voice seemed genuine. My men lost track of you after the incident at Giovanni's. I was concerned. I'm fine, I said, moving away from Mike toward the windows. Just needed some air. There was a pause, filled with unspoken questions. Then, is Reeves with you? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I hesitated too long. I see, Dante said, his voice cooling several degrees. Eleanor, I need you to listen carefully. Mike Reeves is not who you think he is. He's involved in a situation that could become very dangerous, very quickly, for both of you. Mike was at my side now, trying to hear the conversation. I turned away. What situation? I asked. Not over the phone, Dante replied. I'm sending a car to bring you to me. We need to talk. Alone. I don't know where I am, I admitted. Some apartment building. I can try to find an address. No need. Your phone's GPS is active. The car will be there in 15 minutes. There was another pause. Eleanor. Be careful until then. The call ended, leaving me staring at the screen. Mike was watching me with a mixture of anger and fear. You just signed our death warrants, he said hoarsely. Do you have any idea what he'll do when he finds us? But something in Dante's voice had struck me as genuine. The concern when he asked if I was safe. The relief when I confirmed I was unharmed. It didn't match the cold-blooded killer Mike had described. I'm going to meet him, I said, making my decision. I need to hear his side of this story. There won't be a story, just a funeral, Mike snapped. Fine. You want to walk into the lion's den? Go ahead, but don't expect me to join you. As the minutes ticked down toward the car's arrival, I stood at the window watching the city lights flicker like stars caught in a net. I was being pulled between two dangerous men, each with his own agenda, neither telling me the complete truth. But at least with Dante, I had a contract, a purpose that went beyond being leverage or bait, and something in my gut, the same instinct that had guided my art, told me that despite everything, Dante Castellano was the devil I could trust. The sleek black car arrived exactly when Dante said it would. From the apartment window, I watched as it pulled up to the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlights like obsidian mirrors. Two men emerged, one taking position by the vehicle, the other entering the building. My phone buzzed with a text, "We're here." Mike had retreated to the far side of the apartment, his face tight with anger and fear. "You're making a mistake, Elle," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Once you're in his world, there's no getting out." I gathered my purse, steeling myself for whatever came next. "I'm already in his world, Mike. At least I'm going in with my eyes open." "Are you?" He grabbed my arm as I headed for the door. "Or are you just seeing what you want to see? The powerful patron, the artistic opportunity. It's a pretty facade for something ugly." I pulled away from him. "Maybe. But right now, you're the one who dragged me into an alley and brought me to a strange apartment. Dante is offering me a ride and answers." "When you figure out what he really wants," Mike called after me, "don't say I didn't warn you." In the hallway, I found one of Dante's guards waiting by the elevator, the same stone-faced man who had been at the Velvet Room. He nodded respectfully. "Ms. Morgan, Mr. Castellano is waiting." The elevator ride and walk through the lobby passed in tense silence. Outside, the second guard opened the car door, scanning the street with vigilant eyes as I slid into the back seat. I wasn't prepared to find Dante himself inside, sitting with casual elegance in the dim interior. He wore a black cashmere sweater rather than his usual suit, the informal attire somehow making him look more dangerous rather than less. His eyes, when they met mine, were sharp with contained emotion. "Eleanor." My name and his voice carried a weight of unspoken questions. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said, settling into the leather seat as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. "Just confused. And tired of being caught in the middle of something I don't understand." Dante studied me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he pressed a button, raising the privacy partition between us and the driver. "I owe you an explanation," he said, surprising me with his directness. "But first, I need to know exactly what Reeves told you." I hesitated, uncertain how much to reveal. Dante's gaze didn't waver, patient but expectant. "He said you're using me to get to him," I finally admitted. "That we have a history, and you're leveraging that somehow." A flash of something, anger, amusement, crossed Dante's face. "And you believed him?" "I don't know what to believe anymore," I said honestly. "A week ago, I was a waitress worried about eviction. Now I'm in a car with—" I gestured vaguely at him, at the luxury surrounding us. "With a criminal?" Dante supplied, his voice deceptively soft. "Is that what he called me?" "Among other things." I met his gaze directly. "He said you killed someone, that he witnessed it." Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us. A new tension, dangerous and electric. "And if I did?" he asked quietly. "Would that change your decision to work with me?" The question hung between us, loaded with implications. I should have been terrified, should have demanded to be let out of the car immediately. Instead, I found myself considering his question seriously. "It would depend," I said slowly, "on why you did it." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. A pragmatic answer. He leaned back, studying me with renewed interest. "You continue to surprise me, Eleanor Morgan." The car turned onto a street I didn't recognize, heading toward the waterfront. Outside the window, the city's gleaming towers gave way to converted warehouses and exclusive waterfront properties. "Your connection to Mike Reeves," Dante said after a moment, "is significant, but not in the way he suggested." "What do you mean?" "Reeves worked for my organization briefly. Low level, nothing important." Dante's tone was dismissive. "He was unremarkable except for one thing. He stole from me." I frowned. "Money?" Information. Dante's eyes hardened. Names of buyers, suppliers, routes, the kind of information that in the wrong hands gets people killed. The implication was clear. Mike hadn't been some innocent bystander who witnessed something terrible. He had been a traitor. He disappeared before I could address the situation. Dante continued. Resurfaced recently, working with a rival organization. Selling them not just my information, but my territory. And me? I pressed. Where do I fit in this? Dante was quiet for a moment, considering his words. I first became aware of you when your name appeared in Reeves' communications. He mentioned needing to check on his old girlfriend. I was curious. So you were using me to get to him, I said flatly, Mike's warning suddenly seeming more plausible. Initially, yes, Dante admitted, surprising me with his candor. I had you followed. Learned about your situation. I planned to approach you, perhaps offer financial incentive for information on Reeves' whereabouts. The cold calculation in his voice should have repulsed me. Instead, I found his honesty almost refreshing after months of struggling against unseen forces, bills, debt collectors, the endless grind of poverty. What changed? I asked. I saw your artwork. Something shifted in Dante's expression. A softening around the eyes, a genuine admiration that couldn't be feigned. One of my people found your old portfolio online, your thesis exhibition, the piece with the broken mirrors and suspended wire. Fragments of identity, I supplied, stunned that he would remember a student exhibition from years ago. It was extraordinary. Dante leaned forward slightly. Raw talent like that is rare. When I learned you'd abandoned your art, were working in that diner. He shook his head. It seemed like a waste I could rectify while still keeping tabs on Reeves. The car slowed, turning down a private drive that led to a modern glass and steel house perched at the edge of the water. Security cameras monitored the approach, and I glimpsed guards patrolling the perimeter. Is this your home? I asked, momentarily distracted by the architectural marvel before us. One of them, Dante replied as we stopped at the entrance. The most secure. No one knows about this place except my most trusted people. The implication that I was now among that select group wasn't lost on me. The driver opened my door, and I stepped out into the cool night air, the scent of salt water sharp in my nostrils. Dante led me inside, past more guards and into a vast open space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. The decor was minimalist but luxurious. Leather, glass, and steel softened by strategic lighting that highlighted an impressive art collection. You said we needed to talk, I reminded him as he gestured for me to sit on one of the sleek couches. About Mike being dangerous, Dante moved to a sideboard, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. Reeves has made powerful enemies, he said, handing me a glass. The information he stole from me, he's now selling to the Vasquez cartel. I took a sip, the whiskey burning a path down my throat. I don't understand what that has to do with me. The Vasquez family doesn't leave loose ends. Dante's voice was matter-of-fact. Anyone connected to Reeves is a potential liability, including former girlfriends who might know something, even unknowingly. Cold fear spread through my chest. You're saying I'm a target? You would be, if not for your association with me. Dante sat beside me, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Smell that distinctive cologne. The Vasquez family and I have an understanding. They wouldn't touch someone under my protection. So the job, the exhibition, it's all just an elaborate protection scheme. I asked, disappointment cutting sharper than I expected. Dante shook his head. The exhibition is very real, Eleanor. Your talent is very real. I simply aligned my interests. Keeping you safe aligns with my desire to create something beautiful and significant in the art world. I set down my glass, trying to process everything. What happens now? With Mike? That depends. Dante studied me intently. He came to you for a reason tonight. What did he want? I hesitated, wondering if sharing this information was betraying Mike or saving him, or myself. He wanted me to run away with him. Said he had connections, could get me somewhere safe. Dante's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Reeves is desperate. The Vasquez family has discovered his double dealing. He's looking for an exit strategy, and you're it, his ticket to disappearing with a clean identity. What do you mean? Your history together makes you useful. A girlfriend with no criminal connections, a legitimate job. You could rent apartments, open bank accounts, cross borders without raising flags. Dante's eyes never left mine. He's not trying to save you, Eleanor. He's trying to use you as cover. The pieces clicked into place. Mike's sudden reappearance, his urgent warnings about Dante, his insistence that we leave town together. It wasn't concern for my well-being. It was self-preservation. I need to decide what to do about Reeves, Dante continued, his tone shifting to something colder. He knows too much about my operation. The Vasquez family wants him eliminated, and ordinarily, I would comply to maintain our peace. A chill ran down my spine at the casual way he discussed murder. And what's stopping you? You. The single word hung between us. Your connection to him complicates matters. I swallowed hard, suddenly understanding the weight of influence I held in this moment. I don't want him hurt, I said quietly, even as part of me acknowledged that Mike had brought this danger on himself, and on me, through his own actions. Dante was silent for a long moment, weighing my words against whatever calculation was happening behind those ice-blue eyes. There's another option, he finally said. Extraction. I have connections overseas. Reeves could be relocated. New identity, new life, far from here. And in return? I asked, because men like Dante never gave without taking. He surrenders everything he stole, names, records, all of it. Dante's expression was impassive, and he never contacts you again, ever. The offer stunned me. Not just the mercy it represented, but the acknowledgement of my feelings, my history with Mike despite everything he'd done. Why would you do that? I asked. After what he did to you? Dante reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from my face with unexpected gentleness. Because you asked. Because your work on the exhibition is more valuable to me than revenge against a small-time traitor. The touch lingered, his hand coming to rest against my cheek. I should have pulled away, should have maintained some distance from this dangerous man who casually discussed murder and mercy in the same breath. Instead, I found myself leaning slightly into his palm, drawn by something I couldn't name. A recognition, perhaps, of the power we both wielded in different spheres. If I accept your offer, I said carefully, what happens between us? Is the job still real? The job was always real, Dante replied, his thumb tracing the curve of my cheekbone. But this, he gestured between us, is something else entirely, something unexpected. I thought of the art we'd discussed, the exhibition taking shape, the opportunity to create again after so long in the shadows. Whatever had brought us together, Mike's betrayal, Dante's calculation, fate's strange machinations, the connection between us now transcended its origins. I want the job, I said firmly. I want to curate the exhibition, create my own work again. But I need to know it's because of my talent, not because you're using me or protecting me. Your talent is the only thing that matters for the exhibition, Dante said, his voice low and intense. The rest, the protection, this conversation, that's separate. A world you've glimpsed but don't have to enter. And if I want to? The question surprised even me as it left my lips. Something flashed in Dante's eyes. Hunger, possession, a fleeting vulnerability quickly masked. Then you do so with your eyes open, understanding exactly who I am and what I do. A criminal, I said, echoing his earlier words. A killer. Yes. No denial, no justification, just stark truth. But also a man who recognizes beauty and talent, who protects what's his. The possessive word should have alarmed me. Instead, it sent a thrill of something dangerous and enticing down my spine. I'm not yours, I said, needing to establish this boundary even as I felt it crumbling. Dante's smile was slow, predatory. Not yet, he agreed. But you could be. By choice, not force. Never force. In that moment, looking into his eyes, I understood the decision before me. I could walk away. He would let me go, would still protect me from the Vasquez threat, would even spare Mike for my sake. The exhibition would proceed, my career would be reborn, and I could pretend that this glimpse into Dante's world was nothing more than a brief detour. Or I could step fully into that world, eyes open as he said, embracing not just the artistic opportunity but the man himself, dangerous, powerful, morally complex, but undeniably drawn to me as I was to him. The exhibition opens in 6 weeks, I said, making my choice. We have work to do. Dante's eyes darkened with understanding and something like triumph. He leaned forward, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that was surprisingly gentle, a question rather than a demand. I answered by deepening the kiss, my hands finding his shoulders, feeling the coiled strength beneath the cashmere. This was no fairy tale romance, no simple happily ever after. It was a beginning fraught with danger and possibility in equal measure. When we finally pulled apart, Dante rested his forehead against mine. I'll make arrangements for Reeves tomorrow. He'll be gone by the end of the week. Thank you, I whispered, gratitude and something deeper coloring my voice. Outside the wall of windows, the city lights sparkled across the bay, echoing the stars above. The woman I had been a week ago, exhausted, hopeless, invisible, was already fading like a forgotten dream. In her place stood someone new, someone who had faced the darkness and chosen to walk into it willingly, with an artist's eye for the beauty that could be found even in shadow. Dante's hand found mine, our fingers interlacing. Welcome to my world, Eleanor Morgan. I squeezed his hand, accepting all that came with those words, the danger, the power, the passion, and the protection. Our world now, I corrected, and saw in his smile that I had chosen correctly. The exhibition would be magnificent, a testament to contrasts, an unexpected beauty, and beyond it stretched a future I couldn't yet imagine. One where art and power, creativity and danger, love and control would exist in a delicate balance that only Dante and I could understand. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive, truly seen. And in the arms of the man everyone feared, I had paradoxically found the freedom I'd been searching for all along.